Hello and welcome back to The Lion's Den. I'm your host Matt as always, and I have a single topic in mind. I actually have something to discuss as well as a few side bits. So let's get into today's topic, which is the difference between cooking and baking. Just hold on, don't stop, stay, come back, please. I swear it's fun and interesting, and hopefully you'll get a kick out of it. So I find cooking very interesting because I quite enjoy the process of cooking, but it has a time limit essentially. If anything takes longer than a total time of an hour to prepare and cook and make, that's when it starts to lose me because I'm a bit more efficient. I like to kind of be done, get things going, get things sorted, and move on. And I think I just really enjoy the fact that you get to consume the output of the activity that you're doing. And if you do it right, it's really nice, really tasty. And I would like to say, or I'd like to think, that I've improved my cooking ability to the point where I can produce pretty decent food. I have picked up a number of techniques over the years, and I can utilize them in various ways. I'm also pushing myself to be a little bit more freelance with it. That's probably the wrong word. Flexible. A little bit more flexible. Not quite following recipes to the T, changing things that I don't particularly like and think would be better for my own personal tastes, and just sort of going by my feel, my senses, because cooking is very dependent on the place that you're cooking in as well as the things you're cooking with. A lot of people online have started saying when they do like baking recipes, not baking recipes, like bread recipes or pastry, they say this is what I used, but you might need more, less, or different things because there's so much variability in the ingredients you get, as well as the conditions of your environment, as well as, I don't know, how the stars are feeling that day. So they emphasize more of doing it by feel and doing it by your own experience, which is very funny because it has led to some interesting outcomes. I won't lie. My cooking style is very simple, to put it bluntly. I will tend to have a base item and then we'll theme things around it. So, for example, a typical meal might be a portion of lasagna, and then we'll add in some seasoned wedges and maybe a bit of salad, some coleslaw, things like that. Or we could go a different route and say, I'm going to have a steak pie. We'll put some mash with it, some boiled vegetables, and some gravy. That's kind of like the simplest way you can build a meal is what is the core item and then add some stuff to it to kind of balance it out. And interestingly enough, I think I have a fairly decent, healthy sort of lifestyle when it comes to food, as well as the fact that I do exercise fairly regularly. So that's all good. There are a few things you can do though to improve meals immensely. First thing is seasoning. Yes, haha, we're British, we don't know what salt is. Although I'm convinced my parents don't know what salt is because their food could really do with a little bit of salt here and there, which I tend to do now. I tend to add salt at the table side because it needs it. Biggest thing for me is vegetables. There are specific vegetables and specific ways to cook vegetables that just make them better. I'm quite akin to boiled vegetables. I don't mind that sort of basic thing because sometimes it can bring exactly what I need, which is a bit of freshness and a bit of water to the table side. You know, you can have very rich foods, and having just something that's simple and plain can be quite nice. Plus, it's perfectly healthy, right? Boiling a vegetable in water just makes it so that you can eat it properly. You're still getting all of the stuff, and you can, as long as you don't overboil vegetables, they will taste good. That's one of the biggest things is some vegetables do not care. You can boil them forever and they will be fine. Some vegetables, though, you boil them for a fraction too long and it's not a good time. Green beans particularly. Frozen green beans, I just assumed were horrible all of my life because they just never tasted nice. They had a weird flavour, they were kind of mushy, a bit grainy, not good. That's what happens when you overboil frozen green beans. I did not know this, but my parents had been cooking green beans for like 15 minutes. They'd been boiling it for 15 minutes. What it says on the bag? 4. Oh my god, they'd been boiling these flipping green beans for 3 times the recommended amount of time. One day when I did that, I boiled them for 4 minutes. They came out They were fresh, sweet, they were crunchy, but like soft, you know, that like proper vegetable texture. They were so good, and all I did was boil them for the correct amount of time. Do not understand how they'd missed that the entire time. It's the same thing with peas and sweet corn. Frozen peas and sweet corn and frozen green beans are a staple for a lot of our meals, and they all need 4 minutes. Exactly 4 minutes, all three of them, because I assume the way that they're packaged is pre-cooking it in some essence. So you just chuck them in at the very end before you're about to eat, and they come out so nice, so crisp, sweet, fresh, like I just said. And it's changed my perspective. It's changed my whole perception as to what frozen vegetables can be, because I didn't realize that they could actually be tasty. One vegetable I'm not a huge fan of, but I'll eat it anyway, is cabbage. We boil cabbage. I've seen other cultures do way better things with cabbage, but I don't know. I've never got on with it. It's just kind of bland. I don't know. Broccoli's pretty good. Carrots are a fun one. You can either boil carrots, and that's perfectly fine. Again, that brings the whole fresh aspect, but you can also roast carrots. Roasted carrots are so good. They go, like, the outside goes a bit tough but chewy in a good way, and then they go insanely sweet, which is really nice, and you get that roasted flavor. Along that same vein, roasted parsnips, so good. Oh, parsnips are a very winter kind of vegetable, but a properly roasted parsnip is awesome. It tastes so good. But an underdone parsnip is horrible. You can't have an underdone parsnip. You can have an underdone carrot, right? Because it just ends up being a bit crunchy. An underdone parsnip is fibrous. Not good. You have to cook parsnips properly. I would take a slightly burnt parsnip over an undercooked one. That's kind of where I'm at on that spectrum. So, but yeah, simple things like that is just mind-blowing to me, that you can do very little with a lot of foods and it still come out really good. I think a big thing is I don't believe people account for cool down time when it comes to a lot of foods. Things like pies, salmon en croûtes, things like that, where they are a contained package with a hot viscous thing on the inside. Obviously you cook it, you want the whole thing to be fully hot all the way through to make sure that it's safe to eat. But then the minute you try and cut that open, it's just going to run everywhere. And a lot of sauces in the cooking world are temperature based. So the hotter they are, the less viscous, the thinner they are. So people don't tend to account for the fact that if you bake something like that for 40 odd minutes, you should really bring it out of the oven and just leave it on the side for like 5-10 minutes so that the inside can cool down a bit. And then it will be, one, easier to like cut and hopefully portion, but two, you won't burn your mouth the minute you try and eat it. That's a huge problem, is that you cut into a hot pie when it's so hot, it's like 100 degrees on the inside, you just destroy your mouth. Hilarious. So yeah, I've sort of built up my ability to cook on the fly, like adjust things as and when I need to, figure things out. The biggest thing that I'm not super good with is meats. I know how to cook meats safely, but cooking meats in a way that they are good on their own is not something I've developed, because it was mostly just expensive. Like, I didn't have the money to go spending on expensive meats when I was at university, so that's not something I developed. The one thing I really haven't developed is baking. Baking is not at all forgiving when it comes to trying to be flexible. The other day, I thought, oh, we've got these really old ripe bananas. I'll make banana bread, right? Can't be that hard. Oh boy, was I wrong. First off, I did it wrong, and I could have fixed it, but I didn't. I just thought, oh, it'd be fine. I'll just go for it. First mistake was, the recipe is mix everything together, then add the bananas. I pre-mashed the bananas in the bowl where I was going to mix everything, because I thought, oh, I'll just do it all in one go, right? It'll be fine. No, I should have put all of the other stuff in a separate bowl and then added the bananas. That was mistake number one. The second mistake was then using different ingredients. So we didn't have a lot of actual butter, but we had stork margarine, which is like a cooking thing for baking specifically. And it said on it, perfect for cakes. I was like, yeah, okay, that's fine. So I chucked it in. And then because I'd already put it in with the banana, it was not going correctly. It was not mixing properly. And I thought, okay, my thought is I'll chuck in some flour and hopefully that'll bind everything together and it'll be all good. It did not. And then I still went ahead and put it in the pan and baked it. It was a disaster. So the main issues there were, I think the proportions were completely wrong and the method was completely wrong, which I didn't realize would affect it quite so much. I don't know why I didn't stop or just pivot slightly, but I was in the mentality of like, I'm just going to throw everything together and see what happens, see if it actually functions correctly or if there is a process that I should be following. The answer is yes, obviously. Baking is a clearly much more fussy thing to do than just basic cooking. I imagine because when you're doing normal cooking for a meal, each element is kind of on its own, so you treat each element separately, whereas with baking, you're combining stuff into a single item, so everything has to work together correctly. Otherwise, the final result is just not going to be correct. What I ended up with was this really dense, very greasy, flat cake. Like it had almost half the texture of a proper cake, but it was really dense. And it was, like you could squeeze it and it would just ooze fat and grease. It was not good. It tasted horrible as well. So that was entertaining to say the least. But I think I will try and do it properly next time. Anyway, hope you've all enjoyed listening. Stay safe, and I'll see you all next week. Bye.